Rain pounded the rooftops of Lagos, turning the streets into mirrors of shimmering water beneath neon lights. Dr. Naomi Carter pulled her scarf tighter as she stepped out of St. Mark's Children's Hospital after a grueling 48-hour shift. She felt the exhaustion in her bones. All she wanted was to sink into her small bed in Ikoyi and forget the world for a few hours. But fate had other plans. As she hurried past the narrow alley behind the hospital, a faint, pitiful sound reached her ears like a kitten crying. She stopped. Another whimper. Naomi turned on her phone's flashlight and scanned the shadows until the beam caught something small, a child, huddled behind an overflowing dumpster. His shirt was torn, clinging to his skinny frame, his skin mottled with dirt and bruises. His eyes, wide and dark, glistened with tears as they locked onto hers. Naomi's heart clenched. She crouched down slowly, murmuring words of comfort in English and Yoruba. The boy flinched but didn't run. Carefully, she wrapped her white coat around his trembling body, lifting him into her arms. He was featherlight, cold as the night air. She carried him inside, ignoring the curious looks of nurses and orderlies as she passed. He needed help. She didn't care about the questions that would come. She laid him on a bed in a quiet hospital room, the bright fluorescent lights making his injuries clearer. A swollen lip, scratches on his arms, fading purple marks on his ribs. She cleaned his wounds, humming softly to soothe him. He didn't speak a word, only stared with wide, fearful eyes that seemed too old for his tiny face. Hours later, after making sure he was stable, Naomi signed a report for the hospital's child protection team, but couldn't bring herself to hand him over to the crowded, often neglectful social services. She knew how easily children could slip through the cracks. Instead, she bundled him in a thick blanket and carried him to her car. Driving through Lagos at 2 a.m. felt surreal. The city's chaos slept under a blanket of rain, broken only by the occasional Danfo bus or motorbike splashing by. When Naomi arrived at her cozy apartment, she laid the boy on her couch and made warm pap sweetened with honey. He watched her warily, but hunger won over fear, and he slowly sipped the warm porridge. "You can stay here tonight," she said softly, smoothing his curly hair. "No one will hurt you, I promise." As she dimmed the lights, he reached a small, tentative hand toward her and whispered, barely audible, "Mama." The single word, soaked in fear and hope, broke her heart wide open. She took his hand in hers and nodded. "I'm here." The boy fell asleep quickly, his tiny breaths steady but shallow. Naomi pulled up a chair beside him and stayed awake, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Memories of her own childhood came unbidden. Nights spent hiding under the kitchen table from her father's rage. Mornings where her mother's face bore silent testimony to their suffering. She remembered vowing as a child that if she could save just one child from feeling that same fear, her life would mean something. Across the city in Victoria Island, Alex Adeyemi was a storm contained in human form. His home was silent, but his heart roared with panic. The security team stood in a line before him, heads bowed as he berated them. "My son is missing under your watch. How could you let this happen?" His voice cracked, his normally calm tone shattered. On the walls of his lavish home, photos of a smiling curly-haired boy mocked his helplessness. He slammed his fist. "On the marble table? Find him. And no violence. We can't afford a scandal." Alex didn't sleep that night. His mind replayed every moment since his son's disappearance. The phone call saying Leo was gone. The frantic search. The realization that someone wanted to break him not through guns or knives, but through the loss of what he held most dear. Back in Ikoyi, Naomi woke up to find the boy curled next to her on the couch, clutching an old stuffed rabbit she'd kept since childhood. The rain had stopped. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, washing the room in gold. The boy blinked awake and, seeing Naomi's face, offered the tiniest, uncertain smile. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said, brushing hair from his forehead. "Do you remember your name?" The boy hesitated, eyes darting, lips pressing. Together, Naomi decided, "It's okay. For now, I'll call you Leo." She made breakfast, soft akara and warm cocoa, and coaxed him to eat. As they sat together, she spoke gently, telling stories about Lagos, about the sounds of the city waking up, the Danfo drivers shouting routes, the street hawkers singing about puff puff and plantain. Leo's eyes widened with curiosity, and she felt hope stir in her chest. Maybe she could give him a reason to smile again. Naomi called in sick at the hospital. She wasn't about to leave Leo alone. Instead, she called an old friend, Detective Marcus Hall, explaining what had happened. Marcus promised to dig quietly, warning her that if the boy belonged to someone powerful, things could get complicated fast. As the day wore on, Leo began to relax, pointing shyly at the colorful pictures on Naomi's walls, giggling when she made funny faces. Each small laugh felt like a victory. Miles away, Alex's investigator traced security camera footage of a doctor carrying a small boy out of an alley. He zoomed in. The woman's face was clear, resolute, and unmistakable. They finally had a lead. Naomi's apartment transformed overnight. Once a quiet refuge for a tired doctor, it now buzzed with the soft sounds of cartoons, the clink of tiny spoons against plastic bowls, and the cautious laughter of a child rediscovering safety. Naomi taught Leo how to say words like ball and book, smiling every time he repeated them in a husky, uncertain voice. Each morning, she woke before sunrise to prepare a small breakfast. Warm ogi with a splash of milk, slices of sweet pawpaw. Leo waited patiently, eyes following her every move. His trust grew like a fragile plant, watered by each kind word and gentle touch. By the third morning, he reached for her hand as they sat together on the couch, his small fingers curling around hers as if he never wanted to let go. Naomi's auntie, Mama Bisi, came to visit when she heard there was a child in the house. The older woman swept into the apartment with the scent of talcum powder and groundnut oil. She took one look at Leo and clucked her tongue. "This one has seen too much for his age," she said softly, gathering him in her arms. Leo, startled at first, soon rested his head on her shoulder, soothed by her familiar grandmotherly hum. That evening, Naomi read Leo's stories from an old book of Yoruba folk tales. His eyes widened with wonder as she told him about tortoises who tricked greedy kings, and brave little birds who outsmarted cats. He giggled when she changed her voice to mimic the animals. Every laugh felt like a miracle. Meanwhile, in a sleek conference room on the top floor of Adayami Towers, Alex sat across from his lead investigator. The man's laptop displayed still images of Naomi carrying Leo out of the alley, placing him in her car. Alex's chest ached at the sight of his son, thin and afraid. But something in the doctor's face, the fierce determination in her eyes, gave him pause. "Dr. Naomi Carter," the investigator said, "top pediatric surgeon at St. Mark's. Respected, lives alone in Ikoyi. She's kept the boy safe." Alex drummed his fingers on the glass table. He could send the police, he could send lawyers. Leo Moore, he needed to approach this carefully, not as Alex Adami, ruthless businessman, but as a father, desperate to bring his son home. The next morning, Naomi dressed Leo in a clean t-shirt and small jeans she'd bought from a vendor. Down the street, she braided his hair neatly, humming as she worked. When she finished, Leo looked at himself in the mirror with a shy smile. Naomi's heart swelled with pride. There was a knock on the door around noon. Naomi opened it to find a tall, broad man standing in the hallway. He wore a navy suit, no tie, his expression carefully neutral. His eyes dark and intense, flicked from her face to Leo, peeking out behind her. "I'm Alex Adayami. I believe you have my son." Naomi bristled, instinctively stepping in front of Leo. "And how do I know you're not the reason he was abandoned behind my hospital?" Alex's jaw tensed. He reached into his pocket slowly, producing a worn teddy bear. "This is Mr. Buttons, Leo's favorite. He's slept with it since he was a baby." Leo gasped softly. His eyes darted between Alex and the bear. Then, with a shaky step, he reached for it, clutching it to his chest before hiding behind Naomi again. Alex's eyes glistened. "I would never hurt him," he said, voice cracking. "I don't know who took him, but I swear on my life I only want him safe." Naomi studied him carefully. His grief looked real. His voice carried the same desperation she'd heard in countless parents' voices at the hospital. But she still needed proof. "Birth certificate, photos, anything that shows he's yours," she demanded. Alex nodded quickly, pulling out a folder with Leo's documents and baby pictures. Leo in a high chair smearing mashed yam on his face. Leo perched on Alex's lap, giggling as Alex read him a picture book. Naomi flipped through them, her heart sinking. There was no denying it. This man was Leo's father. "Fine," she said at last. "But you'll only see him here with me, present, until I'm sure he's safe." Over the next week, Alex visited every afternoon. Naomi watched him kneel on the living room floor, building block towers with Leo. She saw his patience as Leo hesitated to speak. She watched his eyes soften every time Leo laughed. Slowly, the boy's fear of Alex turned into cautious curiosity. He began to babble a few words, first in English, then in Yoruba. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Naomi invited Alex to stay for dinner. They sat around her small dining table eating ifa riro and pounded yam. Alex shared stories about growing up in Ibadan, how his mother taught him to read under a kerosene lantern, how he worked odd jobs to pay for university before building his company from the ground up. Naomi told him about her late mother, about her first day as a junior doctor, about the vow she made to protect children who had no one else, As they talked, the air between them shifted. Alex wasn't the powerful CEO anymore. He was just a father who had almost lost everything. And Naomi wasn't just a doctor. She was a woman who had given his son love when he needed it most. After dinner, they sat side by side on the couch. While Leo fell asleep in Naomi's lap, Alex reached for her hand, hesitating. She let him take it. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the storm outside felt like a distant memory. The days settled into a fragile routine. Mornings filled with Leo's giggles as Naomi taught him the names of animals in Yoruba. Afternoons when Alex arrived with coloring books, toy cars, and warm smiles. Evenings when they all shared meals. In Naomi's cozy kitchen, in those quiet moments, the lines between strangers, friends, and something more blurred, but beneath the surface, a storm brewed. Naomi noticed the tension etched into Alex's face whenever his phone buzzed. He tried to hide it, turning away to take hushed calls, but the worry was always there when he hung up. One evening, as Leo slept curled up with Mr. Buttons, Naomi asked softly, "What aren't you telling me?" Alex hesitated. His eyes searched hers, the weight of the secret pulling his shoulders down. Finally, he exhaled. "Leo wasn't kidnapped for ransom," he confessed. "Someone at my company, someone close to me, arranged it. They wanted to ruin me, not just in business, but in the eyes of everyone who matters." Naomi's heart pounded. She thought of the terrified boy she'd found behind the dumpster, the bruises, the way he cowered at every sound. "You think someone took your son just to destroy your reputation?" she whispered. Alex nodded, pain and fury warring in his eyes. "I've made enemies, Naomi. I thought I could keep Leo safe with guards and gates, but I was wrong. Whoever did this knew we would never recover if Leo vanished." Naomi reached across the table, taking his hand. "Then we'll find out who did it. But no violence. Alex, if you really want Leo to grow up without fear, you have to show him that power doesn't mean hurting people." He looked at her, eyes shining with something like hope. "Help me," he said simply, and she agreed. They spent the next days gathering clues quietly. Alex's investigator discovered suspicious payments made to Leo's former nanny from a shell company connected to one of Alex's closest executives, a man named Tund. Naomi helped Alex prepare a plan instead of confrontation. They would gather evidence and present it directly to the board of directors, ensuring Tund would face justice legally and publicly. One morning, Naomi found Leo drawing with crayons at the kitchen table. His scribbles showed 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a big sun. One tall, one medium, one small. Above the figures he'd written Mummy, Daddy, and Me. Tears filled Naomi's eyes as she knelt beside him. "You are so loved, Leo," she whispered, hugging him tightly that night. Naomi and Alex stayed up late, papers and laptops spread across her coffee table. They traced transactions, crafted statements, and practiced what Alex would say when he revealed the betrayal. Between their work, they shared stories of childhood, dreams, and regrets. When Naomi laughed at one of Alex's memories from university, he couldn't stop staring at her radiant smile. "I don't think I've ever met anyone like you," he said, voice low, eyes intent. Naomi felt her breath catch in her throat. "I don't think I've ever felt this safe," she replied. The day of the meeting arrived. Naomi stayed home with Leo, distracting him with stories of wise tortoises and cunning spiders, while Alex entered the glass-walled boardroom of Adayami Towers. He stood tall before the board, laid out the evidence, and exposed Tund's betrayal without a single raised voice or threat. His calm strength commanded respect. By the time he finished, Tund had been escorted out, and the board members' support for Alex was stronger than ever. As Alex walked out into the bright Lagos afternoon, he felt like he could breathe. For the first time in weeks, he called Naomi immediately. "It's over," he said, his voice warm and triumphant. "We're safe." When he arrived at Naomi's apartment that evening, Leo ran to him, arms wide, shrieking, "Daddy!" Alex caught him, lifting him high with a laugh that rang through the small living room like music. Naomi watched them, her heart overflowing with relief and love. Later, as they tucked Leo into bed together, Alex turned to Naomi. "I know it's soon, but I can't imagine my life without you. Without both of you, Naomi. I love you." Tears welled in her eyes as she cupped his cheek. "I love you too." The weeks that followed felt like a dream. Naomi never wanted to wake up from the apartment that once echoed with her quiet solitude, now overflowed with giggles, the patter of small feet, and the soft murmur of conversations that stretched late. Into the night, Alex began staying over more often, bringing small gifts, wooden puzzles, colorful storybooks, and cooking breakfast with Naomi on weekends. Leo grew bolder every day, his eyes brighter, his laughter fuller. Each morning, Naomi braided his hair with gentle fingers, singing softly while Alex prepared his lunchbox. They became a team, moving together with the unspoken ease of people who had chosen each other. One sunny afternoon, Naomi invited Alex and Leo to visit her mother's old home in Abayo. Naomi once played as a child, sharing stories of the woman who taught Naomi how to care for others even when life was unkind. There, beneath the shade of the ancient mango tree, Alex got down on one knee. "Naomi," he said, voice trembling but sure. "From the moment I saw you holding Leo, I knew you were the answer to prayers. I didn't even know I'd whispered. You've given my son hope and given me a reason to believe in love again. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks as she nodded. Leo, who'd been watching with wide eyes, squealed with delight and threw his small arms around both of them. In that moment, surrounded by memories and blessings, they felt like a family made whole. The wedding was small but vibrant, a ceremony blending Yoruba traditions with Naomi's modern taste. Guests gathered under white canopies adorned with bright Ankara fabrics. Naomi wore a cream lace iro and buba with a gel that shimmered under the afternoon sun. Alex looked dashing in his dark agbada. Leo, in a miniature agbada of his own, proudly carried their rings up the aisle, beaming at the cheering guests. Their vows were simple but powerful. Naomi promised to love Alex and Leo without condition. Alex pledged to protect and cherish them with all he had. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, they kissed to a chorus of ululations and applause. They moved into a new home on Banana Island, a modest, sunlit house with enough space for Leo to play in the garden. It was warm, filled with photos of all three of them. Leo's first day of school, the day he learned to ride a bicycle. Family dinners with Mama Bisi teaching Leo how to roll perfect amala together. Foundation, a program supporting abandoned and vulnerable children across Lagos. They visited shelters, trained caregivers, and created scholarships for children who had no one to advocate for them. Each time Naomi hugged a child trembling with fear or Alex knelt to speak softly to a wary little one, they remembered how Leo had looked that first night and how far love had carried them. One evening, in their backyard, Naomi leaned her head against Alex's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" she asked quietly. Alex nodded. "Every day. And I thank God we found each other." Leo ran up to them, breathless with excitement, and climbed into their laps. Together, the three of them sat beneath the stars, wrapped in a peace none of them thought possible. No matter how dark the night, love can heal what fear tries to destroy. True power isn't in wealth or control, but in kindness, patience, and the courage to choose grace over anger.